If I want to get it, maybe those facts are a clue. If somebody tells me Rothko's paintings are about being happy and having a nice time at the beach, I can point to his intentions and go, no, you're wrong. Because I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to misinterpret something. That could be really awkward. Like when your friend who you thought was straight sends you a bunch of flirty messages and you're like, babe, is there something you need to tell me? And she goes, what? No, I'm definitely straight, definitely interested in men. Everybody sends messages like that, right?
Girls like, girls like, girls like, girls like you.
Some philosophers have said that the meaning of an artwork is part of it, albeit not a part that you can see with your eyes. Take, for instance, Fountain, one of the most famous works of art ever. It was presented in 1917 by Marcel Duchamp, and it's what's called a ready-made, a sculpture that was already made because it's just an ordinary urinal. He bought it from a shop. To the eyes, Fountain is identical to other urinals that are not art. So the argument goes, what makes it different is its meaning. If you don't get that meaning, you have, in a sense, failed to experience the artwork that is Fountain. You've just seen a urinal. Funnily enough, I have some artwork with me today that is about this very question. Interpreting art, not whether your friend is flirting with you. Although actually, kind of both. This is Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov, one of the most famous novels of the 20th century. The story is that the poet, John Shade, has been murdered on the night that he completed his greatest work. So the poem has been published posthumously by his good friend Charles, with notes explaining its meaning. But as we read on, Charles's notes get weirder and weirder. He starts claiming that certain words in the poem are really a coded message about how John was in love with him, but his wife wouldn't let him say it. And really, the poem is all about Charles until he's talking about things that are completely unconnected. And we're like, hang on a minute. Did he murder John? A lot of the humor comes from the fact that Charles's interpretation of the poem is wrong. He says it's about one thing, it obviously isn't, and that's why it's funny. But how do we know he's wrong? Well, it would be very helpful if we could just ask John what his poem is about. And indeed, some philosophers have said the way you find out an artwork's meaning is you look at the artist's intention. If it seems like your friend is flirting with you, but it's kind of ambiguous, just ask her how she feels. But it doesn't really help us with Pale Fire, because the whole setup is that John Shade has been murdered. We don't know what he intended. Maybe Charles is right, and the poem really is about him. And this problem comes up a lot in art history. We have evidence of what artists like Rothko and Duchamp intended for their works, but often that isn't the case, especially if the art is very old. And even if we could go back and reconstruct an artist's intention, it might not be a very secure foundation on which to base an interpretation of their work. The French philosopher Michel Foucault pointed out that the author of a text is sometimes a bit of a vague construct, even a brand. Basically, our reconstruction would kind of be an interpretation as well. As Charles shows us, it's perfectly possible to imagine an idea of somebody in your head who supports your interpretation of their work, but who isn't that close to the real thing. Maybe your friend is flirting with you, but maybe you're just projecting, because secretly, you kind of want her to. The risk is that we just end up repeating what other people have told us about the artist's intentions, regurgitating the marketing rather than actually engaging with what they made. That's why the philosopher Roland Barthes said we should forget about the author and just focus on the text in his famous essay, Death of the Author, which, yeah, John is dead, so I guess you got what you wanted there. Roland Barthes, where were you on the night that John Shade was murdered? Just to make things even more hazy, The British art historian Michael Baxendale said that artists don't really have intentions for their work the same way that an architect has an intention for a bridge. When you design a bridge, you plan it all out beforehand and you have a very clear goal in mind. But art doesn't really work that way. Every brushstroke you add to a canvas, every line to a script, every note to a score changes the relationships between everything else and changes the whole. As you work, your intention develops. So if we're trying to reconstruct the artist's intention, where do we start? There isn't really one intention, there's an infinite sequence of them. John Singer Sargent took almost a whole year to finish the portrait of Madame X, and he tried a lot of different poses before he settled on the final thing. Rothko took years to finish the Seagram murals, and he changed his mind about what he wanted to do with them. As somebody who is a working artist, I can tell you from experience that intentions absolutely change. I recently finished writing a play. It's going to be on in London soon. It's called The Prince. I'm really, really excited for it. Tickets available in the doobly-doo if you're interested. When I started it, I intended to write something about the monarchy. But the more I worked, the more I realized it actually needed to be about something completely different. And the final product has almost nothing to do with that. So if we try to reconstruct my original intention to decide what the play is about, how is that going to work? It definitely seems like you can be wrong about art. But I'm still not clear on how you can make sure you're right. I am the Portrait of Madame X by John Singer Sargent. Am I a study in light and shade? Or am I a sexual scandal? I have a suggestion. Maybe you need a different angle on things. I am Pablo Picasso's paintings. All of them viewed at the same time from different angles, because that's Cubism, baby. Some people think that I am the greatest artworks of the 20th century. A lot of people look at me and they go, I don't get it. And my suggestion is, don't focus too much on the intellectual stuff, or you might miss out on what the art really has to offer. The philosopher Susan Sontag says we should stop trying to interpret art. Stop trying to get it and just experience it. Like Duchamp's fountain. Everybody says, oh, he's making a statement about the art world. And Picasso's paintings, everyone says, oh, he's asking the big questions like, what if there was a really fucked up looking woman? But art isn't a statement or a question. If it was, the artist would just write it down. Art isn't philosophy with pictures. It's art. So turn off brain and tune in to the aesthetic experience. I sometimes feel a little bit like that with my videos. Sometimes people comment and they're like, can you just make a list of all your major points and read them out without all of the extra stuff? And I'm like, no. Sometimes art is supposed to be difficult to get. For example, I have another novel here, What It Feels Like for a Girl by Paris Lise. Full disclosure, Paris is one of my best friends, but I liked her novel before we met. It's about a kid called Byron who grows up on a council estate in the Midlands and has a really rough time. And the whole thing is written in the dialect of that region. If you're not from that specific geographic and socio-economic place, it is sometimes hard to interpret. And that's a good thing, because, spoilers, Byron is trans, which is also never explained. There's never a scene where like a doctor turns up and explains to the audience what trans people are and confirms that Byron is one. The reader's struggle to interpret the text parallels Byron's own struggle to just live, free of the interpretations other people push on them. The challenge to the reader is, even if you don't 100% understand this person, can you still feel for them? So in a way, if you 100% got it, you'd almost be missing out. Interpretation is the revenge of the intellect upon art. Even more, it is the revenge of the intellect upon the world. To interpret is to impoverish, to deplete the world, in order to set up a shadow world of meanings. Real art has the capacity to make us nervous. Interpretation makes art manageable, conformable. I think we can really get to grips with this idea by looking at the work of modern American playwright David Mamet, who is a little bit of a problematic fave of mine. In 2009, Mamet wrote a play